Good morning. Happy Friday. It is time for just a word from the Word. Our passage this morning comes from the prophet Ezekiel, chapter 22 and verse 30. And I'm reading from the King James Version. And here is what it says. And I sought for a man among them that should make up the hedge and stand in the gap before me for the land, that I should not destroy it. But I found none. The Lord was talking to the prophet Ezekiel in this passage, and he was talking about the sin and the rebellion of Israel. And the Lord began to declare destruction on Israel and just talked about the punishment, the curses, that you can actually go back to Deuteronomy 28 and read that if the children of Israel were to obey the Lord, then there would be blessings. If they were to disobey the Lord, there were going to be curses or punishments. And so we find in Ezekiel 22 that the Lord is saying, look, they've disobeyed me. There is punishment coming. But when we get to verse 30, it's one of the saddest verses, one of the saddest verses in all of Scripture. God says, I've got to bring destruction. I've got to bring punishment. I've got to be true to my word. But I looked for somebody to see if somebody would actually pray, to see if somebody would stand in the gap, to see if somebody would be an intercessor so that I won't have to destroy. And God says in Ezekiel 22, in this particular instance, but I found none. And if you read in verse 31, God says, so basically, I'm paraphrasing, I have no choice. I have to bring the punishment. That verse grabbed me yesterday, and I felt like I needed to share it with you. And I understand this is a little heavier than a normal Friday. However, let this never be said of us, that as long as we are living, as long as we are breathing, let God find intercessors among us. People that know how to pray for their homes. People that know how to pray for their churches. People that know how to intercede on behalf of their city, of their state, of their country. Oh God, let it never be said while you and I are walking on this earth that God looked for an intercessor and he could find none. I'm gripped by this morning. When's the last time that compassion so filled your soul that you were driven to your knees in prayer, crying out for those that you love, crying out for revival at your church, crying out for revival in your city, crying out for revival in your state, crying out for revival in your country? When's the last time we were so pressed in our spirits that we pushed away the food and got on our knees and sought God with tears streaming down our faces and maybe even groans coming from our guts in intercession for our city, for our church, for our family, for our country? This morning's just a word from the Word. God is calling for intercessors. God is calling for those who would seek his face and stand in the gap so that souls can be won to the kingdom. We're not just here walking and talking, y'all. Eternity is at stake. Let me point you to eternity this morning. And I dare you to look in the face of God and not be moved by compassion. Everywhere we go today, every person that we touch, there is a possibility that they need to hear the words of life that we've been given. They need to hear the words of truth that we have to share. I challenge you, don't be ashamed. And if you're shy, get on your knees and ask the Lord to fill you with a burden so strong that you're not shy. You don't have to be hateful. You don't have to be forceful. But you can be confident. Get on your face before the Lord until a holy compassion envelops you. Let it never be said of us that God looked for an intercessor and he could find none. I pray God calls us to intercession today for our family, for our church, for our city, for our state, for our country. We need Jesus. God bless you. I'm not asking for you to have a beautiful day today. I pray that you have a day full of intercession. Go into your weekend with a burden for souls. That is my charge to you on Friday, January the 20th. Let it never be said God could not find an intercessor. God bless you. Lord willing, we'll see you Monday morning.